Hello there.
Hello, hello.
So,
Hello,
welcome
Cristina.
everyone to
Hello,
the
everyone.
second
Hello,
week
everyone.
of our international decathlon, jointly organized with the school in Benevento, Italy, and the school in Bucharest. And today we are going to talk about pragmatics. And I'm very happy to introduce to you to my colleague, Cristina Atu, who will have a lecture in the following days to introduce our speaker today.
So, thank you, Honorina. Hello, everybody. As far as I see all you smiling, it means that we are all okay. We stay negative and think positive. That's the most important thing. Okay, Francesca, you are looking quite very well. As far as the introduction has been done by my dear friend Honorina, I would like to introduce you Francesca D'Angelo, who received her PhD in Applied Linguistics in 2019 with a study in bilingualism in co-tutorship of University of Salerno and the University of Edinburgh. So she specialized in cognitive linguistics, multilingual education, third language acquisition, and gender studies from social linguistic perspective. As Honorina has already mentioned, she's going to speak to us about pragmatics. So we will pay our careful attention to her. And afterwards, we are going to ask students to give their questions, and we start talking. So Francesca, you have the floor, please.
Thank you.
We are all ears for you today. Okay, hello.
Thank you so much for introducing me. I'm going to share my screen.
Yes.
Okay.
Do so.
Okay. Thank you. So today I'm going to provide a brief introduction of pragmatics, a very interesting subfield of linguistic analysis. During the first part of the lesson, I'm going to compare and contrast a few definitions provided by the most important and influential scholar in the field, just to understand, just to provide a bit of background. We are going to discover the reason why we need pragmatics in real life conversation. Then we are going to address few key concepts, including deixis, reference and inference, context and co-text, conversational implicature, conventional implicature, and speech-chat classification. The second part of the lesson is going to be dedicated to the application of these concepts. In particular, we are going to see what happens in adverts. So how do we see and discover pragmatics in adverts, in advertisement? Okay, to the question of what's pragmatics, Yule and Morris have tried to provide a comprehensive, satisfactory definition. Let's have a look at the first one. So according to Yule, pragmatics is the study of contextual meaning communicated by a speaker or writer and interpreted by a listener or reader, so by the addressee. Morris points out that pragmatics is the study of the relation of signs to their interpreters. So again, he stresses the word interpretation, interpret. Yule again highlights that only pragmatics allows human into the analysis, but which kind of analysis? Their assumptions, their purposes, their goals, their actions they perform while speaking, so by means of language. Okay, so from these three definitions, what we can notice, what we can highlight is the fact that it's a particular type of meaning from what we are used to. In fact, if you have a look at this graph where we have all the sub-levels of linguistic analysis, you can see that pragmatics is located right next to semantics, okay? So we usually start with the analysis of sounds and letters, which comes under the field of phonology, phonetics, and graphology. A step up, we find what comes under the umbrella of grammar, so what we traditionally call grammar at school, that is to say the analysis of sentences, clauses, phrases, and words. And pragmatics is right next to semantics, because both deal with meaning, but it's a particular kind of meaning, because as regards semantics, semantics deals with the meaning of phrases, words, utterances by themselves, okay? Whereas with pragmatics, we take the meaning of these words, sentences, and phrases, and we put it in a specific context, in a particular conversational situation, and we need to investigate what the speaker or the writer means by those utterances, okay? So again, if we talk about pragmatic competence, have a look at this graph and you see that it's made of these different subcomponents, sub-elements. And the most important one, again, is context, that we are going to define and discover in more details in a while. So to develop grammatic competence means to know about the context, again, of a particular conversation, the interlocutor status, the register, the cross-cultural differences that most of the cases are cause of misunderstanding, because if speaker A and speaker B don't share the same cultural background, this may be the cause of some misunderstanding, linguistic misunderstanding. But pragmatic competence also deals with semantics and syntax, utterance inferences, utterance interpretation, okay, on behalf of the listener or the other C, and non-verbal communication as well, so including gestures, facial expressions, and also the posture. So to sum up, if somebody asks what's pragmatics, we can answer first, it's the study of the speaker meaning, what people mean by their utterance, rather than what the single words or phrases might mean by themselves, because this comes under the field of semantics, as we have seen. If we have a look at this short conversation between speaker A and B, the one in the red and the blue t-shirt. So one is asking, hey, do you mind if I borrow your language comprehension textbook? And the other answer, yes. So speaker A says, great, thanks. And the other is a bit disappointed. So can you understand, can you guess the reason why speaker B, so the one in the blue t-shirt, is so upset, let's say, from this reaction? So what's the problem here? Why there is this misunderstanding? Because speaker A, so the one in the red t-shirt, what does he mean by saying, do you mind if I borrow your language comprehension textbook? So is it based on the semantic meaning or pragmatic meaning, the misunderstanding? Hello? Please don't be shy, because I've got a lot of questions and tasks for you today. Okay, take a look and let's imagine a conversation like this occurring, like, hey, do you mind if I borrow your language comprehension textbook? Yes, I do. And the other takes the book, okay, despite everything, and says, okay, great, thanks. So here, this is a practical example of what happens when pragmatic and the semantic meaning, you know, just clash. But we can also answer to the question, what's pragmatics, by highlighting the importance of the context, so of the contextual meaning. So all the circumstances and the audience or public. So these are all the sub-elements composing, you know, the context, what we mean by context. So the individuality, time, location of the conversation. Oh, sorry. The activity, the relations, and so on. So as you have seen from these few definitions so far, context seems to be the key word in pragmatics, okay? Without context, we can't understand pragmatic meaning. So, third element that we need to take into account when we describe, when we define pragmatics, is the study of how more gets communicated than said, okay? So the inference that are made by the listener or readers in order to arrive at the interpretation of the intended meaning. Okay, so it's not always so explicit what the speaker or the writer means by saying something. We need to interpret, we need to guess, we need to infer what's behind. So the so-called invisible meaning, the unsaid, which is recognized as part of what is communicated. So we need to investigate what's behind. And finally, pragmatics is also the study of the expression of relative distance. So the closeness or distance of the listener or reader, which determines how much needs to be said. Okay, we have another example here. So we have speaker A that says, there is a store over there. So the part of the dialogue highlighted in pink in brackets is the unsaid, okay? So speaker A, by saying there is a store over there, actually means let's go there, let's go inside, let's have a look. And speaker B answers, no, meaning I don't want to go inside. Why not? So why you don't want to go inside? I'm tired. So I don't want to go because I'm tired. So this is what is inferred. So in other words, pragmatic studies how people make sense, construct each other linguistically. This is another example of two speakers. Let's imagine a conversation between two friends who don't need to make explicit everything they say because they share some cultural background. So we can also omit something in a face-to-face conversation. So speaker A says, so did you? Without saying what. Speaker B answers, hey, who wouldn't? But did what, in your opinion? So let's try to imagine a context to clarify this conversation. What could it be? Which could it be, the context? Any clue? Hello? So pragmatics requires us to make sense of what people have in mind. So again, we have this conversation, this imagined conversation with blank spaces, and we need to fill those blank spaces with something, with some elements that we usually take from the context of the conversation and the shared knowledge, the shared cultural background. So a conversation like this, okay, without the context, cannot be understood. We can just imagine, guess what speaker A is asking and what speaker B actually did. But we don't know because we don't have a context here. Okay. So let's now address some key concepts in pragmatics. The first one is deixis. Deixis is usually defined as the way of pointing reality by means of language. But how are we able to do so? So we accomplish this pointing by means of deictic expressions. They depend on the speakers and hearers who share the same spatial context. Okay, in this case, with deixis, it's a fundamental concept that we need to share the spatial context, okay, in a face-to-face interaction. We have different types of indexicals. We have person deixis that we use to point people, such as me, you. Spatial deixis that are used to point to location, such as here and there. Temporal deixis used to point location in time, such as now, then, later on. Okay, and the indexicals, as I was saying, depend on sharing the same space between the different speakers in a conversation. As regards the person deixis, there are three categories. So on the level of speakers, so I, the addressee, you, and others, so including other people in the conversation, so referring to them by means of he, she, and they. The social deixis is particularly interesting because it's referred to indicate the relative social status, okay? In many languages, these deictic categories become markers of relative social status as well. So the honorifics are expressions that mark the addressee, that the addressee belongs to a higher status. So we have Dr. Fajardo here. I've chosen an example taken from Spanish because I know that a lot of our students have been studying Spanish at least from the first year at university. So in Spanish, we have this distinction between tú and usted, and the choice of one form will communicate something about the speaker's view of his or her relation with the addressee. So the higher, the older, and also the more powerful speaker will tend to use the tú and vice versa. So nowadays, the age distinction is more powerful than the economic distinction in different countries. So the third person form can also be used in English language to communicate distance and non-familiarity. But it can also have an ironic or humorous purpose. For example, would His Highness like some coffee? Or we can use the third person to make less direct, less straightforward accusations, such as somebody didn't clean up after himself, because this sounds less direct than you didn't clean up. I'm really curious to know how the languages that you know convey social deixis. So think about some examples. For example, our Italian students can think about a particular way of conveying social deixis that is typical of Southern Italy, which is similar to French language as well. It's the same pronoun that we use. Hello? An Italian student?
Il voi?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Because let me explain to the other international students. In Italian, we have the third person, okay, just to communicate a sense of distance, non-familiarity, okay, like in English. So lei, which is lei. But in the Southern Italy, so this is a regional variety, we use voi. So it's very similar. It's the same of the French language, vous. for historical reason, of course, for the Bourbons. And what about the other languages that you know, including Romanian and also German? We have seen Spanish. Do you have a similar difference in Romanian? How do you address to older people or people with higher status? How do you address to your professor at university? Anybody? Do you have the same pronoun for any type of social status, or do you make difference by means of language, addressing expressions? No? Any German students?
In German, we have Sie.
Sie, yes. Third person. So similar to Italian. Lei. In French, we have vous, like in southern Italy, so the regional variety. Okay. So with spatial deixis, we have these forms that are used to point to location, such as come here, go there. But we can also use it with to express, to convey psychological distance. So when speakers mark how close or distant something is perceived to be, that man over there, so implies psychological distance. But also the deictic projection, so when speakers act as if they are somewhere else, I'm not here now, so if we answer the phone. Then we have temporal deixis, so forms that we use to point to location in time, such as now and then. And of course, they change according to the speaker's and hearer's point of view, okay? And the distinctions for person, spatial, and temporal deixis are particularly evident when we pass from the direct to the indirect or reported speech in English. So let's have a look at this question. Are you planning to be here this evening? I asked her. What happens when we transform these questions in reported speech? I asked her if she was planning to be there that evening. So this becomes there, okay? This evening, that evening, there, here. So there is a shift from the near speaker point of view, meaning of the direct speech, to the away from the speaker, meaning of the reported speech, with the use of distal deictic forms. Reference and inference are other two key concepts in pragmatics, okay? The reference in particular is an act that a speaker or writer uses linguistic forms to enable a listener or reader to identify something, okay? Words by themselves don't refer anything. So people refer by means of language, of course. Referring expressions are linguistic forms like proper noun, definite or indefinite noun phrases, and pronouns. And when we make a choice of one type of these expressions rather than the other, we make this choice based on what the speaker assumes that the listener already knows, okay? So it's fundamental that we share a particular knowledge, a cultural knowledge about something, about a topic, about a situation. For example, look at him, or the woman in red, A woman was looking at you. So the reference is always tied to the speaker's goals and beliefs about the knowledge of the listener, of the addressee, in the use of language. Inference is another fundamental concept that I've already introduced when I was defining pragmatics in a general way, in generally speaking. So the inference is fundamental for successful reference to occur. So we must recognize the role of inference and collaboration between the speaker and the listener, because we need to understand what the speaker has in mind, okay? Just to reveal the so-called unsaid, so to go behind the hidden meaning. So sometimes we make use of vague expressions because we rely on the listener's ability to interpret what we mean. We don't need to make everything explicit because we know how explicit or implicit we can be in a conversation depending on our addressee and on the shared knowledge that we have. So we can refer, for example, to, oh, you know, the blue thing, that stuff, and we are sure to be understood by our listener. Let's have a look at the pragmatic connection. This is a conventional association between a person's name and a kind of object within a socio-culturally defined community. So, for example, it can happen that we say, can I borrow your Shakespeare? Okay, because we are sure that our addressee, that our listener knows that we are referring to a particular work written by William Shakespeare. Or we can say, oh, you know, the Picasso's on the far wall. That's the one that I prefer. Okay. Let's have a look now at the role of the co-text, which is also fundamental when we have a written utterance, a written text or an extract of a text, okay? So the co-text differs from the context, which is less tangible, less visible, because it deals with the linguistic environment in which a word is used. So the co-text clearly limits our range of possible interpretations that we can have for a word or a particular expression. Let's have a look at this example. Brazil wins World Cup. So Brazil is the referring expressions and the rest of the sentence is the co-text. So to compare these two fundamental elements, we can say that the co-text is the linguistic part of the environment where the referring expression is used, and the context is the physical environment in which a word is used. Let's try to guess the context for these referring expressions. So the first one says, your 10:30 just cancelled. What can it be, the context for these referring expressions? First one. 10:30, 10:30 what?
Come on, don't be shy. Try to provide an answer, okay?
A flight.
Pardon me?
A flight.
Yeah? Okay. Yes, there is no correct or wrong answer here. We can just imagine a context. So please, don't be afraid. Okay, second one. Who wants to try? The heart attack mustn't be moved. Where could we find this type of referring expressions? Where are we here? The heart attack mustn't be moved. Is it a station? Is it an airport?
But in which sense the heart attack mustn't be moved?
Yeah, let's try to imagine a context.
The first
Makes
thing that I imagine maybe is an hospital, but I don't know if it's
Yes.
correct.
Yes, absolutely. It can be an hospital.
And now
Yeah.
it's intended to not move the heart attack.
Yeah, for example, from room A to room B.
So for example, the heart attack is referred to a person.
A person, exactly.
All right.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, as you can see, even in the first referring expression, you know,
10:30,
the 10:30,
in this case,
yeah, the
it refers
train
to a flight.
is not made, exactly, the bus or train or whatever is not made explicit because it relies on the ability of the addressee to make sense of what is not said, so of the invisible meaning, the inferred. So you need to infer, to guess, to make sense of these expressions, relying on what? A context. Okay.
Yeah, I think that
So
the
that's
first
why the
example,
context. Mhm.
the first example is more general, while the
Yeah.
second and the third one are specific. In particular, the second one.
The
Because
second one was difficult to guess, wasn't it?
not too much, but it can only be referred to a person.
Yes, yes. Heart attack, a person, of course. Whereas
Maybe an
the
animal,
first
but,
one, as you were noticing, yeah, it can maybe the 10:30 train, the 10:30 bus, coach. Yeah. Well done. What about the third referring expression? A couple of rooms haven't complained about the heat. Do rooms complain?
Good morning. Can I try?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay. In my opinion, I think we have a guest in a hotel, for instance.
Yes, absolutely, can be. Mm-hmm. And what the context can be? So, is it summer? Is it winter?
I think we could be in winter, and there's a problem without. There's a problem with about the head.
The radiators, yeah, can be, absolutely.
But I
So,
think
a
that we
couple
don't
of
know.
rooms.
Or
Mhm.
it could be in summer.
Yeah, it can also be the other way around. So we are in summer, they are just complaining about the fact that the conditioner doesn't work.
Okay.
So
Maybe-
a lot of rooms are complaining, but a couple of rooms.
Maybe it's not easy as that, but,
Or the other way around.
because we
Yeah.
can be in winter also. For example,
Yeah.
in Sharm el Sheikh, there are 30 degrees also in winter, in January or February.
Wow,
So, for
I
example,
didn't know that. Yeah,
so it
absolutely.
can be both winter or summer, but it's referred to the people in the specific rooms in this case.
Yeah, so the hosts or this of this hotel, of course. Yes, well done. So from a very brief analysis of these three referring expressions, we have seen how important is the context to make sense of the unsaid, of the invisible meaning behind what is said, and how important is sharing a particular knowledge between speaker and hearer. Otherwise, they wouldn't make sense, would they? Okay, so what do we need for a successful conversation to occur? Chris developed a theory of the cooperative principle where four maxims are needed for a successful conversation to occur. So the first one is the maximum of quantity. So make your contribution as informative as required. Do not make it more informative than required. So in short, don't be redundant, okay? The quality, the maximum quality. So make your contribution true. Do not say what you believe is false. Do not say that for which you lack adequate evidence. So tell the truth. Relation, be relevant, and manner. be perspicuous. So avoid any type of obscurity, ambiguous expression, be brief and be orderly. These maxims should be recognized as a sort of unstated assumptions that we have in conversation. So every time we have a conversation, we have these 4 maxims in mind, even if we don't know that they were developed in 1975 by Rees and so on. So there are certain expressions that speakers use to mark that they may be in danger of not fully adhering to these principles. Okay, so we unconsciously try to make clear that we may not completely adhere to one or more of these maxims. And these are called edges, okay? There are cautious notes about how an utterance should be taken when giving information. Let's have a look. So, for example, with the edges of quality, when we say, as far as I know, they are married. So this means I may be wrong, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm just letting you know that I might not adhere to the maximum of quality. Or I may be mistaken, but I thought I saw a wedding ring on her finger. I'm not sure if this is right, but I heard it was a secret ceremony. He couldn't live without her, I guess. Okay? So all the ones highlighted in red are called edges of quality. As regards the edges of quantity, we pronounce them every time we say, as you probably know. So to cut a long story short, in brief, I won't bore you with all the details, but, and so on. So I'm not adhering to the maximum quantity, and I know. Edges of relevance. I don't know if this is important, but this may sound like a dumb question, but not to change the subject, but, oh, by the way, well, anyway, so these are all edges of relevance. Edges of manner. This may be a bit confused, but I'm not sure if this makes sense, but because you remember the maximum manner says, don't use any type of ambiguous expressions, okay? Be clear, be forward. I don't know if this is clear at all, but so I'm just saying I'm not completely adhering to the maximum of manner in this case. Conversational implicature. So the basic assumption in conversation is that participants are adhering to this cooperative principle and the maxim that I've just discussed with you. The following examples show that a speaker is conveying more than he or she is said via the conversational implicature. Let's have a look here at this example. I hope you brought the bread and cheese. Speaker A. Speaker B answers, I brought the bread. Okay, so in this case, Speaker B is assuming that Speaker A infers that what is not mentioned was not brought. So if I answer, I brought the bread, I might have not brought the cheese, okay? Let's have a look now at this other conversation between Speaker A, who says, do you like ice cream? Speaker B answers, is the Pope Catholic? So what does it mean in your opinion? Just a little hint here.
He loves ice cream. He or she loves ice cream.
Yes, of course. So by saying Speaker B, by answering with this question, so which sounds a bit ironic, what does he mean or she mean?
That she loves ice cream. Of course, she loves ice cream.
Of course. So yeah, highlighting the of course. He or she wants to highlight that is an obvious question. So it counts without saying that I like ice cream. Now let's have a look at this other fundamental concept in pragmatics, which is conventional implicature. So in contrast to the previous implicature, this one are not based on the cooperative principles, okay? They don't have to occur in conversation and don't depend on spatial context or interpretation by means of the addressees. So they are associated with specific words of a particular language and result in additional conveying meaning. So we don't necessarily need a context to understand the conventional implicature. Okay, so for example, in English, we have the conjunctions but and. When we use but, we imply an implicature of contrast. So we expect that something that comes after is in contrast with what we have just said when we use but. Whereas when we use and, we imply that we are adding something, okay? Mary suggested black, but I chose white. The words even and yet are also conventional implicature. In particular, even implies the contrary to expectation, and yet implies that the present situation is expected to be different at a later time. So again, the conventional implicature, different from the conversational implicature, are not based on context and shared knowledge, but they are merely linguistic. What do we mean by speech acts and events? Okay, they are actions performed by utterances, the speech acts, and they are commonly known as an apology, a compliment, a complaint, an invitation, a promise, a request. And they are part of the speaker's communicative intention. The circumstances surrounding the utterance are called speech events, and it's their nature which determines the interpretation of an utterance as performing a particular speech act. For example, I've got a little task for you here. This tea is really cold. So this utterance can be interpreted as a complaint or a praise depending on the circumstances. Why am I mentioning the circumstances? So if it is winter and I say, oh, this tea is really cold, in your opinion, is it a complaint? Is it a praise? Is it a compliment? So let's imagine that it's
a complaint. Because it could be hotter.
Yeah.
Because we are in winter.
I might be craving something hot. So
should be hotter.
Yeah. Whereas if it's summer, the situation is different.
It's different.
So if you serve me, if you offer me a cold tea and it's summer and it's like 40 degrees outside, I'm thanking you.
It is better.
Of course, it's not a complaint, of course. Thank you. So the speech acts. Let's have a look at the locutionary act first. This is just the basic act of utterance which produces some meaningful linguistic expressions. So if you have difficulty in producing a meaningful utterance because let's say it's not your mother tongue, then you may fail to produce a locutionary act. It's just the basic act of the utterance production. The locutionary act deals with the communicative force of an utterance. So we form an utterance with a particular function, a goal in mind. It may be an offer, a statement, a promise, a threat, and so on. The perlocutionary act is the effect of the utterance. But sometimes the same locutionary act may have different illocutionary forces, okay? For example, take next utterance and state the locutionary act or force. I'll see you later. We have seen that the locutionary act deals with the intention that we have. So think about the purpose of this locutionary act, okay? And let's try to imagine what we mean. What's our purpose in the conversation when we pronounce this utterance? I'll see you later. It may be a promise, or let's imagine that we have a discussion, an argument, okay? And this argument cannot go on in this place, in this room, because I don't know, we are at school or university. And if I say, I'll see you later, in your opinion, which of this illocutionary act am I performing?
To be honest, it may sound like an intimidation somehow.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a threat.
It's a threat.
Yes, absolutely. So even something that usually can be considered as just a promise, okay? When we greet somebody, we can say, I'll see you later. In this case, in this particular context, it changes the illocutionary force. So it may mean something else. Again, the same, because the same locutionary act represents different illocutionary forces. So it can be, so for example, this image can be a prediction, a warning, a promise. Okay, so now let's go to the most interesting part of the lesson, I hope. From theory to practice, pragmatics in adverbs. Now we are going to see how the concept that we have just discussed together are used in real life, especially in adverbs, so something that we deal with every day and everywhere, I'd say. So we are going to see how presuppositions and difference work in adverbs, the role of context, again, and fuzziness of language, intertextuality, and deixis. Okay, so presupposition is something that the speaker assumes to be the case prior to making an utterance. We have two posters advertising Coca-Cola. The first one says, Coca-Cola, hello happiness. Second one is a question, what does open happiness sound like? Let's try to guess which is the presupposition behind it. So which is the hidden meaning here? What do we need to infer?
That Coke will make us happy regardless.
Okay, and it's based, there is also a bit of intertextuality here, because I don't know if you have in mind, if you remember another slogan, a well-known slogan by Coca-Cola brand, which is open happiness, with a bottle of Coke just opening. Okay, so it's also referring to a previous advert, which is well known. And the Coca-Cola brand is assuming that the addressees of the advert already know that opening Coca-Cola means opening happiness. So it's opening, you know, a way to refreshment and also fun and joy and relax, and all these elements associated with this drink, okay? Because it's something that we have in family, with friends, at concerts, when we go out. So the adverse maker need to make sure that they know the elements that are already shared with the cultural knowledge of their addressees before making the advert, and to make an advert, you know, successful. Any other comments? So what do we need to understand the message, the slogan of the advert, apart from the slogan itself, which is quite brief, just hello happiness and a straight question in the second one. So it's fundamental, the cultural knowledge, so the shared knowledge, and all the references, the implied references, and the image. Okay, the slogan of an advert taken away from the image doesn't make sense, as we will see better in the next one. Let's have a look at this other one. So we have an advert of a watch. The brand is Patek Philippe. Let's try to decode, to interpret the presupposition behind it, the hidden meaning that the advert maker is relying on. So I read you the slogan because I don't know if it's clear enough, the image. You never actually own a Patek Philippe. You merely look after it for the next generation. Is it effective? Is it successful, in your opinion, first of all?
Yes, it emphasizes the durability, or rather the claimed durability of the watch, meaning that it will last at least for about 100 years.
Yes, absolutely. So it's highlighting the fact that it's timeless. Once you buy it, you are not buying it for yourself, but it's a family jewel, as you are saying, of course, that you can pass from one generation to the other. And what makes the slogan so effective, in your opinion?
It could be the image. For some, evoking an image of a child could endear some viewers, or it could be the font size on "you never," and then the smaller sentence.
Mm-hmm. And another thing that I just want to recall your attention on a phrasal verb, look after. How do we use look after? We usually
protect somebody, not just something, yes, in this case. Yes. So yes, it's evoking a human emotion together with the image of the child.
Absolutely, great. Yeah. So to look after a child, a baby, yeah, we usually use this phrasal verb to refer to people, of course. Whereas here, there is this strong connection between the watch and the child. And the presupposition behind it is the idea of family man who, you know, is buying the watch, not for himself, but for the future generation. So how kind. So again, we have the role of context, which is particularly meaningful in advertisement. Let's have a look at this poster advertising Brooklyn beer. You don't have, I read you the slogan, you don't have to cross a bridge to have a great beer. Simply go to your local store. Okay, we speak about a certain context of the advert itself, of a context of the process of decoding the message, and also the context of the actual interpretation of the advert. So a more physical meaning of context and a less physical meaning, which is referring to the process of interpretation of the advert itself. So in this case, let's imagine that you don't see the bridge behind, okay? If you just read You don't have to cross a bridge to have a great beer. Would you be able to guess, to infer which bridge is the advert talking about or referring to? Probably yes, if you know the beer, if you know the brand.
Yes.
Yeah, because the brand.
It's called
brand,
Brooklyn.
Okay, yeah. So the pun here, the wordplay, is based on what? On two shared knowledges. The first one is the brand name, of course, and the second one is the fact that you know that the image behind refers to which bridge?
The Brooklyn Bridge, yes.
Brooklyn Bridge. Okay. So in adverbs, we have to deal with two concepts, which are ambiguity and vagueness. The vague terms remain in the sphere of the unclear, on the undetermined. So they are used on purpose to draw the attention because they want us to raise a question which needs to be answered in our mind. So the context may clarify the discourse of the addressee in order to discover the mystery and to interpret, to add some stuff to the so-called, the blank spaces that need to be filled. So if we go back here to the previous advert that we have just analyzed, which is the question that is raised? You don't have to cross a bridge, but the question may be, which bridge? And our mind associates, that bridge with the Brooklyn Bridge, because we recall, the brand. On context and fuzziness, I've chosen these two very different adverts just to analyze the role of context again, which is fundamental in pragmatics and in particular in advertisements, and the fuzziness of language. So the first one is a campaign to support breast cancer research. The second one is just advertising a latte from a well-known company, a well-known cafe in the UK. So let's have a look at the first one. First of all, is it effective in your opinion, and why?
Yes, because there is the word beat in breast. So yeah, it makes it effective.
So yeah, it's the word breast, beat, which it's transformed into beat. And also have a look at the gesture, the hand. Which symbol does it convey?
Victory.
Yes. So beat, we have this double meaning conveyed by the word beat and the symbol victory. Yeah, so it becomes an instrument to beat cancer. Okay. The second one, better latte than never. It's again a pun based on what?
Later.
Better later than never. Better latte. Yes, exactly. Exactly. So the context in this case is fundamental to understand this slogan, this pun, because without the cup of coffee, would you be able to understand that that behind this latte, it's later what he or she means? So here we have two elements, the cup of coffee and what else?
The slogan.
And to clarify the slogan, to make it more powerful, we have also a little bit of context. Okay. So again, we have the fuzziness, the purposeful ambiguity of words and puns in this case to make adverts meaningful and powerful and effective, and the context, which is again fundamental to make sense of the hidden words, of the hidden meaning. Intertextuality, that I've already mentioned you before, refers to the way in which a text can make use of another one by referring to it or by simply integrating it as a part. Here we have a well-known brand, an Italian brand of cars, Alfa Romeo. This is Giulietta, one of its most popular cars, and the slogan says, "I'm Giulietta and I'm such stuff as dreams are made on." So where is the intertextuality here? Why the advert is playing with this this quote by whom?
It is about Shakespeare.
Yes, we have Giulietta, that is referring to one of the main characters, of course, Juliet,
and
which is also
we are
the name of the car.
Yes.
Yeah, and this quote is taken from the work, so Romeo and Juliet. I'm such stuff as dreams are made on. But in this case, what makes it effective and powerful? The fact that Giulietta is not a woman, but is the car itself. So by saying I'm such stuff as dreams are made on, the advert is conveying this idea that it's the car itself that is made of the same substance of dreams. And of course, they are exploiting the name of the car itself, so Giulietta, Juliet. Another car, another probably the most iconic Italian car, 500, to understand the role of the X's in advert. So in pragmatics, we have said that the X's is the way of pointing reality by means of language. And it underlines the relationship between language and context, because we are pointing to reality using via language. So this becomes even more important when we speak of a pragmatic view of adverts as they quote and decode messages in text. So here we have this slogan. It sounds like a song. Get your all-time tip-top cream of the crop. Gotta be in there. Ultimate happy tune into the Fiat 500 feel good. Okay, here we have at least two deictic expressions. Would you be able to find it? So remember that we have different types of DXs, like person DXs, space DXs, time DXs.
Yes, on that matter, I think gotta be in there is space DXs, referring to the actual cockpit of the car.
And we have your, which is referred to the addressee. Okay, so this is a person that exists. Now, I don't know what time is it. Okay, I've got one last task for you. Try to translate the slogan used in the analyzed adverts. Any of it, like You can choose this one. Well, translating Shakespeare, maybe it's a bit too much today. So, which is the aspect that you find particularly difficult to convey? Does it have the same effect in the target language? So I'm not expecting a perfect translation of the slogan like in 2 minutes, don't worry about it. But I just want to put the focus on how difficult it would be to translate the adverse and just a short extract of a slogan. Why, in your opinion? Just let's try to highlight the difficulty we may encounter, we may face in a translation of adverts.
So one difficulty is reproduce the same effect.
Yes, absolutely. So it wouldn't have the same effect in any target language you may choose. And the aspect, in your opinion, that would be, the most challenging and tricky and difficult aspect that you may face, you may encounter in translating adverts, I think, would be translating a slogan, because most of them are based on a very close relationship between the image and the text. And of course, by changing the, for example, if you take better latte than ever, which is a sort of assonance with later, latte, later. So translating it into Italian, meglio tardi che mai, tardi, the word tardi doesn't have anything to deal with latte. Okay. Any other comments or questions or curiosity?
In Romanian, we wouldn't find a word resembling late, latte,
Yeah.
so it would be the same.
Yeah,
Like in
we will need to
Italian.
change the object, the image. Again, also breast cancer, beet cancer. We will need to change everything.
We would need 2 words, one for breast and the other one for beet, because it would be impossible to find in Romanian one word that you can hide some letters and get to another meaning.
Yes, yes, absolutely. In Italian too, because there is this very strong link between context and fuzziness, the slogan of the purposeful ambiguity that advertisers use to make it more powerful. Yeah.
We should always bear in mind the word formation in English. Word formation in English is completely different from other languages, and it tends to be shorter than in other languages. And the combination of words is what it is. That's why in advertisements, they prefer to use English, not only because it's worldwide, because you can play with words in another way.
Absolutely.
And, with short words.
Oh, I lost her.
Yes, me too. You have a poor connection, Oriana, I think.
Yes, I totally agree with what Professor Palucci was saying. So English morphology, yeah, I think she's back. No.
Well, she probably kept talking. She doesn't know that we don't hear her.
Yeah. Yeah, English language is more straightforward, it's more direct, of course.
But then again, it's related to any language, because you can come up with a very nice construction in Italian or in Romanian, and for those speaking that language, that would make sense. It would coin some, I don't know, common memory, grounds, popular culture, anything that would be so hard to translate into another culture.
True. Yeah. Yeah, I've chosen adverts to apply the pragmatic concept because I think in adverts there is almost everything that we have just discussed and explains. There is presupposition, inference, context, of course, so the role of fuzziness of language, deictic expressions, and sometimes we just don't think about it. So it's a way to pay attention more to what's around us from a different perspective, maybe.
Yeah, it was a very interesting lecture, and I thank you very much. My colleague had a class, so she just phoned me.
Yeah,
I'm very sorry. It was very instructive in so many ways, because we can use all the things we've learned here on daily basis, communicating with our family, with our teachers, within the school, because the context is the clue to any communication. It hasn't to be mainly academic or I don't know, very elevated discourse. It comes with the language every day that we use. And it was certainly very interesting for my students watching this via a sharing screen, inclusion that learn legal English and pragmatics are so very important for the legal discourse. And there is quite a new research area of studying pragmatics and legal language. And, you know, in legal discourse, everything is measured in money and in real damages. So there you can actually put a price on that. So welcome back, Oriana.
Yes, I'm sorry. I just disappeared.
We assumed that.
Okay.
So thank you very much for this great lecture. And I will invite students for any comments, questions.
Honorina, can I just finish what I was saying?
Please.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Yes. Okay. First thing, I think that in translating advertisements, the visual and verbal go together. I mean, this was a class on pragmatics, but the visual images sometimes are the leading, give the meaning, not only in the context, but give the meaning in certain places and time. But as Francesca was saying, this is a lesson on pragmatics. The other thing I wanted to say, just to add, or else the students think that this is the stuff as dreams are made of are from Romeo and Juliet. It's not, it's The Tempest. Please don't be ignorant. I mean, those on the slogan, you know, are putting together two different Shakespeare books, please, two works, two plays. So I don't want students thinking that Prospero's words in The Tempest are the words of Romeo and Juliet. There's no such thing. Why are they doing it? Because of ignorance? I don't think so. They're matching two different things. It's Giulietta, not the play, but the car. So they're saying there's a difference. We're quoting Shakespeare, we're quoting two plays, and so forth. But the point I wanted, and this is my question to Francesca, is that promotional language, slogans, and so forth, giving also the nature of English, if you want, promotional language is not everyday language. It's artificial. It's artificial. And if we go back to the different categories you spoke about, we're using it in another way. It's not everyday language.
Well, I meant something that we are dealing with in our daily life.
Yes.
In our daily life, we are surrounded, we are by adverts on the internet, on newspapers, on magazines, on posters, everything, every day, yeah, everywhere.
Yes, but they don't follow the same principles. That's the point. It's artificial language. It's built up. It's not everyday conversation. We see it, but it's part of our life, but it's difficult to follow certain principles in advertisement. It follows another logic. As Honorina was saying, if we have legal language, it's going to follow money. Promotion.
Well,
sure, because they need to
income.
catch attention to sell a product, of course.
When promoting
promotional language, yeah, of course.
It also brings money, the income.
Yes,
you are saying.
It brings money, yes.
So we guessed. You see, the context is very important. And as we were following what you were saying, we guessed that you are talking also about money, but in profits.
Yes.
Yes, as I was saying, when you lost a little bit, the connection is that the reason why I've chosen adverts is that I think it is a way to apply, to see in a more tangible way, in a more explicit way, all the concepts, all the pragmatic concepts, you know, at work. Especially and particularly because advertisers make use of these instruments, of these linguistic tools in a very powerful way, because they need to catch the attention and of course to sell a product, to be persuasive. It is an artificial language, of course, but it's still they still make use of the pragmatic concept and key elements that we have just highlighted and discussed together. So I thought it was a fun way to apply and see how they work in language, in real language or artificial language, as you like. Oh, she lost the connection again.
Happy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other comments from students or questions? No? Feedback? Anything?
Well, I just remembered I've seen an ad, or rather a campaign against cancer, which wasn't specifically targeted towards breast cancer, but it was cancer in general, in Italian. And it was kind of a text made of stone that said incurabile, which means that cannot be treated, to which there's no cure. And the I and the N before curabile were kind of eroded, kind of consumed and torn, destroyed, but not all the way. Much like in this picture, the R and the S are not all the way occluded. We can still catch a glimpse of them. So the meaning of the other commercial in Italian was that its cancer is in between being untreatable and being fully treatable. This is why the I and the N are eroded. And I think it's similar here, although maybe it was not intended this way. Because if the R and the S were to be completely covered, maybe the viewer would have trouble understanding which type of cancer it actually is without noticing the pink ribbon on the bottom section.
Thank you. Thank you for this interesting observation, and I hope that in future you will just looking around in the streets, you will just pay attention to these adverts in a different, from a different perspective. I don't expect you to have to do like a pragmatic analysis every day because, it would take a while, or a translation of the slogan, but, just be curious and be critical and try to remember. I hope that you will try to remember these concepts and apply to all the languages that you know and you're going to learn in future.
Visuals do become a very important part of our life, and visual plus text, all the memes that we see. And Oriana was talking about the different parts from the same play, like we learn to understand and analyze a text, and it depends on the level of our knowledge and of our readings. Sure. It's the same way with the pictures and with the images that we see. The more you read, the more you know, the better you understand the message that was meant for you to understand.
Yes.
Visual literacy is a very important subject nowadays.
Absolutely. Of course, and it's another way of interpreting the context. So yes, when we talk about context, it's not just the physical meaning of context, but it's also made of this all different sub-levels, so including images. And we have seen how crucial are images in adverts. So they're just linked, necessarily linked with the text, so the slogan of them. So we couldn't understand the message without the image behind.
Yes, so
I would like to add something. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, so not to change the subject using a hedge of relevance, but I wanted to add something about the difficulty in translating slogans, because, for example, we have McDonald's, which is known worldwide, and its slogan is "I'm loving it," which is never translated in Italian because of the structure of the language. While, for example, in German, it is literally translated "Ich liebe es," because the structure is similar, is more similar to English, while in Italian, this would not be possible.
Yeah, thank you, Irene. I didn't know that. So in German, they have actually translated the slogan. It's so internationally recognized that I thought, it would be odd to see it translated into any other language than Norway, because it's so part of the logo, of the brand itself, that I couldn't imagine, another translation for it. Thank you, Irene, for this observation. Any other questions or comments?
Okay, so I was saying that apart from pragmatics, our lesson today was to learn and to read a lot of things in order to know to interpret everything we see. And if there are no more questions or comments,
yes, we can close.
We will close for today, and we will see you all tomorrow, same time, same credentials to connect. So as Oriana was saying at the beginning, we're getting used to spend our noons together.
Yes.
Tomorrow will be the 6th lecture in a row. And we are talking about a Spanish lecture for tomorrow.
Yes.
And I'll see you all then. Have a nice afternoon and see you all tomorrow.
Thank you.
To everyone.